You're listening to The Stephen Torriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Stephen Torriello Show. And now, here's Stephen.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. And man, do we have a lot to get into. I want to go ahead and start the show out with this. The U.S. intel officials warn of potential terrorist threat at mass gatherings. This just dropped 2 hours ago. It says Joe Biden's America. This is hat tip to Christina Layla. Joe Biden's America. U.S. intel officials are now warning of potential terrorist threats targeting... Sorry, folks. That is my computer. Always seems to want to do the crazy stuff in the middle of recording a show. Anyways, back to the article. So, U.S. intel officials are now warning of potential terrorist threats targeting mass gatherings in the United States after ISIS attacked concert-goers in Moscow last month. You guys remember that? That was the big story which was very, very bizarre story, by the way. And I don't think we actually got to the bottom of that. There was that mass shooting and fire in Moscow at that concert hall. And then the terrorists actually tried fleeing the country into Ukraine, but was actually intercepted right by the border. And there's been a lot of conspiracy theories out there pretty much saying, like, ISIS, they don't flee. They usually, when they carry out an act of terror, that's it. They're done. It's a wrap. They either got a bomb vest on or they do something. They hardly ever flee. In fact, I don't know of one time where an ISIS terrorist has actually fled an attack. So that whole story was just bizarre from the beginning. The U.S. intelligence bulletin warns that ISIS operatives worldwide and so-called lone wolves might respond to recent statements from the terrorist group touting the attack in Russia and encouraging more attacks on public venues, even if the individuals are not members of ISIS, the outlet reported. FBI and Homeland Security officials warned U.S. law enforcement about the potential of terror at mass gatherings such as sports stadiums, concert venues, or houses of worship in the United States. The warning comes before millions of people are expected to gather outside the view of the solar eclipse. I was actually going to bring this up, either on today's show or tomorrow's, how I think people just need to stay frosty. Look, I'm not telling people to live in fear. We are not going to give these bastards the joy in stoking fear into Americans. We're not going to do it, and that's not what I'm going to do on the show. I just want my listeners just to stay frosty. That's all. Just keep an eye out. Be vigilant. Be aware of your surroundings. Always know where your exits are as soon as you enter the building. That kind of stuff. But I did want to read this story to you because I think there is potential, because of Joe Biden's America, that we probably have sleeper cells in this country. I don't see how we don't, for the simple fact that put yourself in ISIS's shoes. Put yourself in a terrorist leader's shoes. When would be a good time to send sleeper cells into the United States? Probably right now, when the borders open. The leadership shows weakness, really a lot of weakness, and they're allowing tens of millions of illegal immigrants into the country every day. Not just allowing them over the border, but by air and by sea, with the flotillas from Haiti. And now you have Joe Biden, which was one of our last episodes, I think the last episode, where Joe Biden is flying in illegal immigrants now on airplanes, approximately 387,000 so far in undisclosed international airports. And I think we actually did the math. It was like over 1,000 flights that Joe Biden and the Biden administration have used to ship in illegal immigrants. So listen, folks, this is the problem with an open border. When you lock your doors at your house, You're not locking your doors because you hate the people on the outside. You lock your doors because you love the people on the inside and you don't want anything to happen to them. And so this has nothing to do with bigotry. It has nothing to do with, hatred towards Muslims or anything like that. This is, that is all just smoke and mirrors. It is just a way, it's identity politics. It's a way for Democrats to drum up their base. No, what the Biden administration and Mayorkas have done to this border, to this country in the last 3 years, is actually a threat to the American people. This is why I say Joe Biden's he should be tried for treason. And I'm dead serious about this. And I don't throw that word around a lot. But, the words treason and traitor come to mind when I'm talking about Joe Biden because of the egregious stuff this guy's been caught doing with the classified documents, sharing classified information with unauthorized sources, willfully retaining classified documents for years and years and years, and the southern border, his immigration policy. I mean, the guy is a danger to this country. This isn't about partisan politics and Joe Biden's a sweet old man and he's like everybody's grandpa, good old lunch bucket Joe. No, the guy is a danger to the American people. His policies are dangerous and destructive. So it's no wonder why we want to secure our borders. We don't want to secure our borders just for the hell of it. We want to secure our borders to keep the people safe on the inside. There's multiple reasons why to secure the border. And this administration just hasn't done it. And it's not only what ISIS has said. There's actually, Iran has made an open threat to the United States just a few hours ago. Essentially saying that because Israel bombed, a major complex of theirs, killing 2 of their generals, that there's going to be retaliation. And literally, I think Iran said the United States better just step aside while they get retaliation on Israel. What that means, I don't know. I really don't know. But you know what? Screw them, man. You don't threaten the United States. This is what I'm saying. Look at the situation Joe Biden has got this country in, man. Believe it or not, during the Trump administration, we didn't see any of this stuff. I mean, we didn't see it. Once in a while, you'd get Donald Trump coming out at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about how he killed al-Baghdadi and how he died like a dog. But other than that, we didn't have constant conflicts like this. I mean, there was actually peace breaking out all across the world. But now it seems like there's nothing but conflict all over the world, and that is because of our leadership, the weakness that the Biden administration portrayed to our enemies. You guys ever heard of the saying, it's better to be feared than loved if cannot be both? That's actually a phrase from Machiavelli, and if you really think about it, it's true. I mean, that's essentially what this administration is. It's so worried about the optics of everything. It's so worried about being liked by everybody. But what happens is your enemies sense weakness. It makes you look weak. There's one thing that you can say about Donald Trump is the guy was unpredictable and our enemies feared us. They may not have liked him, but that's not what we're here for. Our adversaries aren't supposed to like us. They're supposed to respect us. And that's what this is all about. The world does not respect Joe Biden or his administration. And that's what's going on. I want to play some audio about the ISIS story. Here, check this out.
Security warning right here in the U.S. from the FBI and Homeland Security, warning of potential threats to public gatherings, the timing of this and why they're concerned tonight. Here's our Chief Justice Correspondent, Pierre Thomas, with late reporting.
Tonight, FBI and Homeland Security officials are warning U.S. law enforcement about the potential for terror inspired by that deadly ISIS attack in Moscow targeting a concert hall. The concern, according to the bulletin, violence targeting mass gatherings such as sports stadiums, concert venues, or houses of worship in the United States. Law enforcement told to be on the lookout for any suspicious activity. The bulletin coming just days before millions will gather to watch the eclipse on Monday. Authorities say following the Moscow attack, ISIS and its supporters celebrated the assault and shared graphic and violent attack footage, the terror group calling for similar attacks in the United States. I'm told U.S. law enforcement is being urged to take this bulletin seriously. Sources say ISIS remains a very real threat.
Yeah. And what do we have? Open borders. How much you want to bet? How many ISIS terrorists have been allowed into our country? How many sleeper cells are in our country right now? We'll never know. But unfortunately, I think we're going to find out the hard way. And let me say this. If there is a terrorist attack on American soil, it will fall on the feet of Joe Biden, period. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when there's going to be an attack. Because, like I said, if you are a terrorist leader, or you want to do, egregious stuff, you want to commit acts of terror on the United States, when is going to be your best opportunity to get in here? Right now. So, like I said, I don't want people to live in fear. We're not going to allow these terrorist bastards to stoke fear into the American people. But what I'm saying is just stay vigilant, stay frosty, keep your head on a swivel, know your exits when going into a building. If they're going to do anything, it's going to be when everybody's looking up at the sky. Like, I can't think of a better time to strike. So, and frankly, I think it's just bizarre, all this crazy attention on an eclipse. I don't know. It just seems like something doesn't seem right with it, man. It's almost like it's way overblown. The media, it's almost like a distraction, kind of. Like they want people distracted for 4.5 minutes. I don't know. That's just where my mind goes. Anyways, moving on. This is actually quite, this is crazy. So Diddy's former bodyguard says there are quote-unquote blackmail tapes that would bring down politicians, preachers, and royalty. Ladies and gentlemen, do we have another Epstein on our hands here? I don't know. It sure seems like it. P. Diddy was up to some pretty crazy stuff. So I got an article here from Revolver News. Most recognized Puff Daddy or P. Diddy as the transformation from gangster rapper to fashion mogul, the ultimate party host, and the frontman for the left's Vote or Die initiative. I didn't even know he had that initiative. That seems kind of vote or die. Well, the left, man, they're quite tolerant, aren't they? The tolerant left. But now it's coming to light that Sean Combs, which is his real name, might have also been at the helm of a vast sex trafficking and blackmail operation, one that could rival Jeffrey Epstein's. If this turns out to be true, Mr. Combs could be staring at the same grim end that cut short Mr. Epstein's reign. Would that not be crazy? If P. Diddy ended up going to prison and the same exact thing happened to him? Listen, when you get these politicians, there is no doubt that there is loads and loads of corruption and blackmail. In fact, I think some of our congressmen, the Republicans, are being blackmailed right now. That's why they're voting for these egregious bills. But there's no doubt there is some weird, wild, freaky stuff going on in Congress. There's just when these people, when you have that much power, the rich, powerful elite, they are very, very weird people. I mean, when you have that type of power and you feel like you can just get away with everything, you do some pretty weird, bizarre stuff. And as you can see, I mean, how many more examples do we need? You got Epstein, you got Weinstein, you got P. Diddy now, Sean Combs. How do you come up with P. Diddy, Puff Daddy? I don't know. I never liked any of his music, though. Did he even make a lot of music, or did he go right into, like, record producing? I was always a Dre fan. Like, if you're talking about record producing and music production, I mean, Dr. Dre blows P. Diddy out of the water. There's just no... I don't even know if P. Diddy even makes beats. I don't know. He gets in... He's a fashion mogul? What does he sell? I don't know. I never got into it. I like rap, but it's definitely not my my go-to music, but I'll listen to some rap. I'm a 90s kid, so 50 Cent, Eminem is by far one of the top 3 rappers. You got Tupac, you got Eazy-E. I can't stand Jay-Z. I think the guy's a moron. I like it, but I like it from a creative aspect. I like it for the music part. Lyrics, I like, now it's just this mumble rap stuff. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, they're not even saying anything. The music, I have to say, across all genres has really went downhill. The music today just sucks, period. So here we go. As more details about Diddy come to light, the question on many people's minds is, was Puff Daddy another Epstein? We actually covered this disturbing angle recently, referring to Sean Combs as the Black Epstein. It appears we have been right over the target with that one. What many Americans might not have caught on to is that the left had their own black version of Jeffrey Epstein, a sleazy figure who's been operating under the radar for quite some time. It's only starting to unravel now with the downfall of Sean Puffy Combs, known to many as Diddy or Puff Daddy or P. Diddy. According to Lil Rod's lawsuit, Diddy, whose real name is Sean Combs, stashed a number of hidden cameras in his properties in Los Angeles and on Star Island. The filing read, quote, while living and traveling with Mr. Combs, Mr. Jones discovered that Mr. Combs had hidden cameras in every room of his home. The filing continued. Combs has recordings of several celebrities, artists, music label executives, and athletes engaging in illegal activity. These individuals were recorded without their knowledge and consent. Oh, buddy. This is going to be huge, folks. The filing continued. Combs has recordings of several celebrities. Okay. It also added Mr. Combs possesses compromising footage of every person who has attended his freak-off parties and his house parties. Freak-off parties? Can you imagine what's freaky to these people? Like, we think freaky is like swingers or something. These people probably have some of the most disgusting, freaky, weird parties anyone's ever seen. And I've seen a lot of weird stuff in my life, folks, but I can almost guarantee you it doesn't hold a candle to what was going on in this guy's house on Star Island. I guess that's what it is. I thought Star Island was in Miami. I thought that's where Sylvester Stallone lived. Is it in Miami? I don't think so. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. The lawsuit alleges that Combs regularly hosted sex trafficking parties, which included the use of illegal drugs. It's been reported separately that the singer's alleged mule was arrested on drug charges at Miami Airport while the rapper's LA and Miami mansions were raided by the police. According to legal documents obtained by TMZ, 25-year-old Brendan Paul was arrested on Monday and charged with 2 separate charges. One count for possession of suspected cocaine and another for suspected marijuana possession. In the paperwork, officers alleged they came across suspected contraband in Paul's travel bags, and after the suspected narcotics were tested, they were found to be illegal substances. Shocker. There has so far been no evidence that connects the drugs reportedly found in Paul's possession with Diddy. Paul is set to appear in court April 24th. So, high-profile names. Record producer Jones claimed in his $24 million lawsuit against Diddy that the rapper's affiliation to big-name celebrities gave him and his associates legitimacy. Links to such prominent figures, Jones' lawyers claimed, meant guests were drawn to the rapper's alleged sex trafficking parties. Court documents filed in New York last month claimed Diddy had access to celebrities such as famous athletes, political figures, artists, musicians, and international dignitaries. So the article goes on. I'll post this in my description. It goes on forever. This is actually a long article. So here is a post from Robert Starbuck. Diddy's former bodyguard says he thinks there's tapes documenting crimes Diddy is accused of and that it won't just affect celebrities, but it'll shake politicians, princes, and preachers as well. This is going to be crazy, folks. Here, check this out.
I don't think it's only celebrities going to be shook. He had politicians in there.
He had princes in there. He also had a couple of preachers in there.
You personally, you think they got tapes?
Well, my personal opinion that if Lil Rob could be trusted and his statements are true, they got him. They got tapes and stuff.
Now, if Diddy had tapes, the feds have them. That's a lot of blackmail.
Yeah. And just to throw one out there, how much you want to bet, just a prediction, that we're never, ever going to see those tapes if the FBI has them. If the FBI has them and there is politicians on them, they're probably going to wipe them clean or erase the politicians, or we'll just never see the tapes. That's as simple as that. The level of protection that goes around the Washington establishment is astounding. The efforts that these people will go to cover their tracks, to cover their own corruption, to essentially cover their asses is, I mean, it is the best in the world. I mean, you're talking about an entire fourth branch of government that has unlimited resources, unlimited money, and can essentially do whatever it wants, and nobody can say a damn thing. This is why you have, this is why you have so many conspiracies. Folks, our intel agencies are some of the most powerful and most corrupt agencies in the world. And so if those tapes are in the hands of the FBI, I'd imagine it's probably going to end up with all the other stuff that we haven't learned about, all the other stuff that they're hiding from us. So typically when the feds deploy that level of force, they have a specific target in mind. Take the Mar-a-Lago raid as an example. There's buzz that they were on the hunt for a classified, quote, binder, rumored to implicate Obama and other goons in the Russia hoax. So it raises the question, were the feds also searching for blackmail tapes or files at Diddy's place? Whatever the case may be, this will be yet another appalling list that the American public will probably remain in the dark about. Yep, I agree. It seems like this is becoming all too common nowadays, while average American citizens like Douglas Mackey, the praying J6 grandmother, and other J6 political prisoners are raked over the coals by the tyrannical U.S. government. Political elites and other influential figures are perpetually shielded from being exposed as the scumbags and criminals they really are. Let freedom ring. Yeah, it is becoming more and more common, and it is a clear sign of tyranny when you have a fourth branch of government like this that is untouchable, that has no oversight by the people. The American taxpayer has no control over, essentially does whatever it wants. These intel agencies are very, very powerful and dangerous agencies, and we are just now starting to figure out just how powerful and dangerous this system is when it's being turned onto the American people. I think the CIA is probably one of the most corrupt agencies in this country. I know a lot of people point the finger at the FBI, but the FBI is a little bit more transparent. Yeah, I know you're probably like, what? Yeah. Believe it or not, the FBI is more transparent than the CIA. The CIA is such a just blob of bureaucracy, of corruption, just go down the list. All of the worst things you could never want to see in a government. And so I'm sure we're going to hear more about this in the coming days. Is there blackmail tapes, and is there politicians on those tapes? I can almost guarantee there is, but are we going to see them? Probably not. That is my prediction. Just throwing that out there. All right, so moving on. I was actually going to segue into my next topic because when I was reading this article, I wanted to know, when in American history has the CIA manipulated the public? And I found this story to actually be shocking. There was tons and tons of times that the CIA has actually used its tools against the American people, with propaganda campaigns, But this one I found to be pretty shocking. And, after talking with Biden voters, and this is what gets me the most, after talking with Biden voters and most Democrats in general, I always notice how naive they are. They still believe things that have been proven false years ago. This is really a phenomenon that I can't seem to wrap my head around. Why do these people continue to believe stuff that they almost have to know are false? Like the very fine people on both sides hoax. You guys remember that they accused Donald Trump of the very fine people, the Charlottesville protests, where the media went on this, 24/7 barrage of just mischaracterizations, out of context speech with this little clip of audio, the same stuff that they do today, but it was nonstop because they were trying to convince the people that Donald Trump was racist. Well, believe it or not, there's still people that believe this lie. And it's shocking to me because you can go in, and we talked about it on the show. We actually went through the whole Charlottesville speech, and maybe we got to do it again. But you can go through the transcript and you could see exactly what Donald Trump said. No, they don't even admit it, but the media doesn't even talk about it anymore. They don't talk about how they manipulated the public by mischaracterizing what Donald Trump said purposely. Took his words out of context to mean something that it just didn't mean. It didn't happen. And then, 6 months later, after people get the transcripts and you have these debates, and by the time the truth gets around, the lie is already around the world. This is what I noticed with a lot of stuff with Democrats. It's like they're just so naive with a lot of stuff that goes on. Like they truly do believe that our intel agencies, there's no corruption, and that they're working on behalf of the American people, and that they're still out there chasing down Soviet spies. Like, this is how naive they are. I don't know. The thing is I don't know if it's on purpose or are they really that naive? I seem to think the former. I don't think they're that dumb to think that the Charlottesville speech actually happened, or that the CIA is still chasing down Russian spies. Like, I know they can't possibly think that. So I think they're in like this, they want to confirm their bias, or they want to, they're willfully ignorant. And what I mean by that is they will play dumb just to confirm their bias. Like they know, like Donald Trump is the perfect example because they do this all the time. Donald Trump will say something like bloodbath. This is the most recent one. You guys remember the bloodbath comment? Donald Trump was talking about the car manufacturing in China. And they took his little snippet of audio, the bloodbath comment, and they pretty much wrote article after article. This was a targeted effort. This was coordinated. This was, the media outlets all colluded with one another to release these articles all in sequence to make maximum impact. Donald Trump says there's going to be a bloodbath if he's not elected. Just when you type in Donald Trump and bloodbath, you look at every single headline from the left-wing Pravda media. All took his words out of context because they know that the American people only read headlines. This is the problem. This has been a problem for a long time. I'm actually guilty of this too, or I used to before I had the show. I thought I can get my news by just doing a quick Google search and then reading the headlines. No. No, you have to read deeper in these articles because in the articles, 4 or 5 paragraphs down, you'll get the truth. You'll willingly or unwillingly. But most of the time, they'll insert a little sentence or two that covers their ass from lawsuits and being their credibility, even though it's already shot. But they don't want to come out and just admit that they wrote the whole story based off of a lie, and so they'll put in a sentence or two that kind of just gives them a CYA. But Donald Trump didn't say that, and to go back to my original point is the media knows that's not what Donald Trump meant. Like the media knows that Donald Trump was talking about car manufacturing in China. And when the people read these stories, they know that he was talking about car manufacturing, but they'll still believe that he was talking about there being a bloodbath if he's not elected. Like, it's almost like they convinced themselves like that's actually what Donald Trump meant. And it almost gets to a point to where they use this term dog whistle. And another example is Donald Trump, one of Donald Trump's indictments. When they're talking about the so-called insurrection on January 6th, they're like, yeah, Donald Trump told his supporters to go to the Capitol and riot. And when you're like, well, wait a minute, though, in his transcript, in his speech, when you play back the audio, he says peacefully and patriotically. And they're like, oh, yeah, but that was just a dog whistle. What Donald Trump really meant when he said peaceful and patriotic was unpeaceful and unpatriotic. He actually meant conduct an insurrection. It's like, wait a minute, what? And this is what they believe, because it's almost like they convinced themselves, like I said, willfully ignorant. You have to be purposely blinded from the truth in order to believe this stuff. I actually call it mental gymnastics, because that's what it is. You have to bend the truth into a pretzel in order to get your desired outcome, to confirm your bias. And I think that's what these people do. And so to go back, kind of got off topic there, but to go back to my original point, is this is something that I notice with a lot of voters, and that they're just naive to the fact that the CIA, the FBI, the IRS, the DEA, the ATF, all these government institutions, they're rotten. They're just rotten to the core, man. They are not doing what their purpose was. And frankly, if you ask me, I think every single one of them needs to be cleaned from the top down. Every single leader position, every single leadership role inside these institutions needs to be fired. I'm sorry, that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's so corrupt in some of these institutions that they're unsalvageable. You can't recover them. And one of those is the FBI and the CIA. Ladies and gentlemen, you had 51 former intel agents or intel officials, whatever you want to call them. 51 of them lied to the American people on purpose in order to get Joe Biden across the finish line. The CIA, you're talking about people that served in our nation's highest intel agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. They lied to the American people about the Hunter Biden laptop being Russian disinformation. And the Democrats, they still give credibility to the CIA. They still think there's no corruption and that the CIA is just, this nonpartisan, pro-American. They believe this to be true because it benefits them. It benefits them to believe that the CIA is not a corrupt institution. Why? Because right now the CIA and the FBI are targeting their enemies, their foes, which are Republicans. I remember being a Democrat, we hated the FBI. Like the FBI, you mean the one that was targeting Martin Luther King? The one that was, that was involved in all this corruption over the years? Yeah, the Democrat Party used to hate the FBI. And now it's like they're best buddies. Now they can do no wrong. In fact, not only that, but any whistleblower that comes out against the FBI, Democrats think those people, it's right for those people to be retaliated against. We see this all the time. And it's like now all of a sudden that the Democrats need the FBI to carry out their wishes, which is to target Republicans and Trump supporters. They're perfectly fine with the FBI. And I think that is the willful ignorance. Like they know they're corrupt, but they have to convince themselves. Their naivete forces them to kind of ignore the corruption because to get their desired outcome. Everything is about outcomes. It's outcome based. To be a leftist today, you have to believe 100% in the outcomes. And so there is no principles. There is no truth. You will say, do, think whatever you got to think in order to get your desired outcome. And that's where we're at right now. And so another got a little off topic there again. The reason why I talk about the CIA and manipulating, I found this very, very interesting story. When has the CIA actually been used to manipulate Americans? And I found this to be quite shocking, and I want to share it with you because I don't think a lot of people know this. But the CIA used modern art as a weapon. Yeah. So for decades in art circles, it was either a rumor or a joke, but now it is confirmed as a fact. The Central Intelligence Agency used American modern art, art like paintings, including the works of such artists as Jackson Pollock, Robert Motherwell, and William D. Kooning, and Mark Rothko, as a weapon in the Cold War. The CIA fostered and promoted American abstract expressionist painting around the world for more than 20 years. This is crazy. And so the CIA was essentially creating a fad. They were making abstract art popular. The CIA was making abstract art popular around the world. And you got to remember, this was in a time during the 50s and 60s where abstract art was not a thing. So this is crazy. So Jackson Pollock, which his paintings now are worth, they're insane. But the art just sucks. This is why people were looking at abstract art and these artists, these expressionists, and they were like, why is that worth $20 million? Because the CIA, this is crazy. Listen to this. So the connection is improbable. This was a period in the 1950s and 60s when the great majority of Americans disliked or even despised modern art. President Truman summed up the popular view when he said, quote, "If that's art, then I'm a Hottentot." I don't even know what that means. A Hottentot? I don't know. The 50s and 60s, man, they were, very, very wild. So, as for the artists themselves, many were ex-communists, barely acceptable in the America of the McCarthyite era, and certainly not the sort of people normally likely to receive U.S. government backing. The CIA was purchasing artwork from these artists to create popularity amongst the world with art, to bring down the Soviet Union. This is wild. So why did the CIA support them? Because in the propaganda war with the Soviet Union, this new artistic movement could have been held up as proof of the creativity, the intellectual freedom, and the cultural power of the U.S. Russian art, strapped into the communist ideological straitjacket, could not compete. The existence of this policy, rumored and disputed for many years, has now been confirmed for the first time by former CIA officials. Unknown to the artists, the new American art was secretly promoted under a policy known as Operation Longleash. Arrangement similar in some ways to the indirect CIA backing of the journal Encounter, edited by Stephen Spender. The decision to include culture and art in the U.S. Cold War arsenal was taken as soon as the CIA was founded in 1947. Dismayed at the appeal communism still had for many intellectuals and artists in the West, the new agency set up a division, the Propaganda Assets Inventory, which at its peak could influence more than 800 newspapers, magazines, and public information organizations. They joked that it was like a Wurlitzer jukebox. When the CIA pushed a button, it could hear whatever tune it wanted playing across the world. This is crazy. And so there you go. For Democrats that may be listening, that, the naive Democrats that think the CIA is just this, this intel agency that's hunting down bad guys. No, absolutely not. These people, these intel agencies, these institutions are so corrupt. But more notably, but what's even worse is they are so powerful. And so this is what you get, all right? This is what you get when you allow an agency, an institution like this to go unchecked for decades and decades and decades. Now its weapons, its propaganda campaign, and all the tools that the American people paid for are all being used against Americans now. So for the Democrats that think that the intel agencies aren't propagandizing or weaponizing information against Americans, I got a bridge to sell you. Actually, I got this article for you. And so if the CIA was capable of, making modern art popular or, making abstract art popular among the world, if they were able to influence more than 800 newspapers and magazines and get the world to believe whatever it wanted to believe, you still think that there wasn't any undercover agents at January 6th that day? You think that was all natural? This is what I'm talking about, man. This is why I woke up a long time ago when it came to our intel agencies and our government institutions being weaponized against us, but through manipulation and propaganda. We all know it. We all talked about it amongst one another. We just never said anything out loud, but we all knew that we were being controlled by our government, and we still are to this day. This is why it feels like we are a slave to the system. Where we go to work every day, we get our paychecks, and we're on this cycle, this routine. And before independent media outlets like this one and, podcasts and radio, they controlled all the information that the American people seen. And this is why things seem so crazy now. This is why I say this election is not about Republicans versus Democrats. This election is about the people versus the machine. The machine sees the end on the horizon. These people, they are screaming in fear and they are lashing out because they are losing power. And they can't lose power, folks. These people they've had control of this country for decades. And they're not just going to hand over the keys to the American people and be like, okay, here you go. Just take care of it. No, these people are going to cling on to power with a deadly kung fu grip. They are not letting go of this thing. And so the American people are going to have to take it back. So the next key step came in 1950 when the International Organizations Division, eye.The, was set up under Tom Braden. It was this office which subsidized the animated version of George Orwell's Animal Farm, which sponsored American jazz artists, opera recitals, the Boston Symphony Orchestra's international touring program. Its agents were placed in the film industry, in publishing houses, and we now know it promoted America's anarchic avant-garde movement, abstract expressionism. Initially, more open attempts were made to support the new American art. In 1947, the State Department organized and paid for a touring international expedition entitled, quote, Advancing American Art, with the aim of rebutting Soviet suggestions that America was a cultural desert. But the show caused outrage at home, prompting Truman to make his Hottentot remark, and one bitter congressman to declare, quote, I am just a dumb American who pays taxes for this kind of trash. The tour had to be canceled. The U.S. government now faced a dilemma. This Philistinism, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. That's a weird one. That may be like the first time I've ever seen that word. Combined with Joseph McCarthy's historical denunciations of all that was avant-garde or unorthodox, was deeply embarrassing. It discredited the idea that America was a sophisticated, culturally rich democracy. It also prevented the U.S. government from consolidating the shift in cultural supremacy from Paris to New York since the 1930s. To resolve this dilemma, the CIA was brought in. The connection is not quite as odd as it may appear, At this time, the new agency, staffed mainly by Yale and Harvard graduates, many of whom collected art and wrote novels in their spare time, was a haven of liberalism when compared with a political world dominated by McCarthy or with J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. If any official institution was in a position to celebrate the collection of Leninists, Trotskyites, and heavy drinkers that made up the New York school, it was the CIA. Until now, there has been no first-hand evidence to prove that this connection was made, but for the first time, a former case officer, Donald Jameson, has broken the silence. Yes, he says, the agency saw abstract expressionism as an opportunity, and yes, it ran with it. This is crazy. I'm going to leave. I don't have time to go through the whole article because we're almost out of time here. But I'm going to leave this in my podcast description. Just reminded me, I am building a website right now, folks. So we will have a mothership for this show for you guys to go to, and it's going to be awesome. And if we got time towards the end of the show, I'll go in a little bit with my vision for the website. It's quite extensive. I don't think it's going to be that great in the beginning, but we're going to get there. I think you're going to like what I got in store. It's going to be pretty cool. Anyway, so I will leave this article in my podcast description until we get a website. But read this article. This is wild. This just proves my point that the CIA, the FBI, all these government institutions have the power to manipulate the public, and they have been for a long time. And so this is exactly the type of stuff I think about when I see something like January 6th and how much that whole thing just looked like a setup. Folks, the January 6th was a setup. That thing was an inside job. You have, what was his name? Stephen D. Antuono, the lead agent at the FBI in the Michigan branch and later in the Washington, D.C. branch, said under oath, there were so many undercover agents on January 6th that they lost count. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're owed an apology from the media. I think we're owed an apology. We're going to have a lot of apologies coming for us. I'm not going to hold my breath, though. But we are certainly owed a lot of apologies. You know, why is it that the right seems to be right on everything? Why is it that Republicans and conservatives seem to be right on all these conspiracy theories that end up just being conspiracies months or weeks later? It's because we think outside of the box. We're not listening to the media. Why don't we listen to what the media says? It's because we know that the media is being ran by these same places like the FBI and the CIA. It's all one gigantic system. It's a revolving door where you have government officials going into media people going into government, and it's just one gigantic revolving door. If there is any more proof to give you, the Twitter files is about the biggest slam dunk when it comes to government and private spying operations and government and private collusion to censor people's speech, to manipulate the public thinking. The Twitter files was probably one of the biggest conspiracies in U.S. history, and which is a big leap because we've just had so many conspiracies the last 5 years from all these institutions. And we only know this because of alternative media. If we didn't have podcasts, if we didn't have YouTube and conservative radio and all the other means of a news gathering that we do, CNN and MSNBC and Fox News would still be running the narrative that was being created by the CIA and the FBI to control the public. Folks, it's not that hard to imagine the government institutions, the intel agencies telling the media what to tell the American people. When back in the 1940s and 50s, they were buying abstract art in order to manipulate the world into thinking that the United States was more sophisticated than Russia. So these people have been manipulating the public for a long, long time. The only problem I have now is, and it's not a bad thing, just so long as it's being done to protect us. But now all these tools and weapons are being used against us, more notably Republicans and conservatives. And so, no, I think all these institutions, they barked up the wrong tree. They went way too far by targeting Republicans, trying to get their preferred presidential candidate across the finish line with the 51 former intel agents that lied about a laptop and gave Joe Biden the ability to lie to the American people. Our taxpayer-funded intel agencies are lying and manipulating the people, and they have been for a long time. And they do not want to give up power. They're pissed off because they got busted, and the American people are starting to realize, like, wait a minute. No, this is our country, and we want it back now. We want the keys to the castle back. You guys are done. Your run is over. The gig is up. And they're not going to hand over the keys easily, man. They're just not. And this is why I think there's such crazy stuff happening, and this is why they're targeting Trump as much as they are. You had the FBI raid a former president's home for documents. They're trying to throw him in prison for the rest of his life, essentially sending him to his death for documents? No. Donald Trump's got more than just a few documents. I think they're right. I think Donald Trump has this so-called binder that I think he's going to save for the perfect time. I think it's his ace up his sleeve that he's going to use at the perfect time to tell the American people and show the American people just how corrupt these intel agencies are and just how desperate they are to retain control over the people, to retain control over the way people think, because they've been doing it for a long time. And so my whole thing is why are we funding these places? Why do the American taxpayer have to fund their own intel agencies spying on them? That, to me, is crazy. So like I said, the CIA and the FBI should be dismantled, and if they're not going to be dismantled, then there needs to be a new agency created to have oversight of those two. And that agency, whatever it's called, needs to be recycled like every 8 years. There needs to be a complete overhaul. How you would do that, I have no idea. But the problem we're having right now within our government is A, the government is way, way too big. It is way too bloated, way too wasteful and ineffective and inefficient. And number two is it costs too much money. They spend too much money. I was actually looking up some numbers. The money that goes into these institutions that are being turned against the American people is astonishing. We now know that the Republicans just approved a new FBI building that's going to be bigger than the Pentagon. The FBI receives $10 billion a year in funding. And the CIA budget is actually classified. Go imagine. Go figure. But according to leaked information that I found, shows that about $40 to $60 billion a year goes to the CIA. And that actually segues me into my last topic here. Spending. NASA receives about $25 billion in funding. I mean, these numbers are astronomical, folks. 60 billion, 10 billion, 25 billion. You're talking over $100 billion right there. A tenth of $1 trillion right there in just those three agencies. And so we, without a doubt, have a spending problem in our government. Unless the American people win the election in 2024 and get their country back, all these places are not only going to stay in place, but they're going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. The bureaucracy is eventually going to get so big that we're not even going to be able to tell what is government and what is private anymore. I mean, as of right now, when you combine government contractors and government employees, it's upwards over 10 to 15 million employees. 10 to 15 million people work in some way, shape, or form for the United States government, whether that's directly or through contracts. That is insane. The framers would be rolling in their graves if they knew that 2 to 3 million people work for the United States government. If they were to see all these institutions, and more notably, if they were to see that the CIA and the FBI were manipulating the public and using the tools and weapons that the people gave them against their own people, what do you think they would do? I think they would probably call for a revolutionary war is what I think they would do. Why do I think that? It's because they did. Because it's the same stuff that was happening with the king in England. So the NASA budget segues me into this article right here, which I actually found kind of interesting. So here's an article from Mashable.com. It says the U.S. is exploring a railroad for the moon. $25 billion, folks. So we have all this debt, all this spending, but somehow our government thinks that we can afford a railroad for the moon. All right? And how much you want to bet the American people are going to benefit from this railroad? Oh yeah, it's gonna put food on our table. It's gonna lower our grocery prices. It's gonna make gas cheaper. How much you want to bet that every single penny that goes into this project, the American people won't see one dime of? And just like Joe Biden spending the taxpayer money on a bridge, he just committed I don't know how much money, but Joe Biden goes out there like he's on The Price is Right. And he just throws out oh yeah, the federal government's going to pay to rebuild this bridge too. You guys know the bridge in, where was it? Boston, Maine? I can't remember where it was. But the guy yesterday, he just commits hundreds of millions of dollars for a new bridge. Before the company, the private shipping company, that, the ship that ran into the bridge that made it collapse, they haven't done an investigation yet. We don't even know what happened. And Joe Biden's already out there committing hundreds of millions of dollars to rebuild a bridge that me and you didn't collapse. We didn't do it. Well, so why do we have to pay for it? No. The shipping company, the private shipping company that's owned and operated out of Singapore, yeah, they should pay for the bridge. And in fact, they already have a lawsuit that's in, I know this is off topic, but I just want to tell you while it's on top of mind, because I was just reading about this. The shipping company, the private shipping company out of Singapore, has already filed a, I forget what you call it. I forget the legal term now. Not a petition. I don't know. Maybe it is a petition. Anyways, they want the liability to be capped at $43 million. And so what they're asking in the lawsuit, they've already filed a lawsuit, papers are already been filed before the investigation's even been done. These people's lawyers have already filed paperwork to cap the liability at $43 million. And Joe Biden's out there committing to replace the whole bridge. Folks, you know what I find? It does make me sick. Trust me, I get angry, but sometimes you just got to laugh at this stuff. This guy actually thinks this is his own money, like he's donating to a charity. I'm going to commit right now. It's like he's buying rounds for everybody at the bar. The federal government's going to cover the full cost of this bridge. If it's like one of those, what do you call those house giveaways, this big house or this old house where they pull the bus away and there's their nice brand new house right there. That's how I feel like Joe Biden is just committing the American taxpayers' money to a bridge that was collapsed by a private shipping company out of Singapore. Why don't Joe Biden wait until an investigation's done to figure out, maybe, I'm just saying, maybe the shipping company should pay for the bridge. I'm just going to throw that out there. Anyways, so they're using a Civil War law back from the 1850s. This is what the shipping company's doing. They're using a law from the 1850s that allows them to cap out the liability for the damages done to the bridge at $43 million. So is this not incredible? And so Joe Biden's he's committing money to completely rebuild this bridge. Without going through Congress, without congressional approval, per usual. Joe Biden never, ever asks for congressional approval when it comes to spending. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of what tyrants do. And so for all this talk about Donald Trump going to be a tyrant, he's going to be a threat to democracy, Joe Biden is a tyrant. Joe Biden is actually doing what tyrants do, which is spend money unilaterally without congressional approval. Like, we have a process for the president to spend money, and he can't just willy-nilly commit hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion of taxpayer money to a bridge because he wants votes. And this is the sickening part about it. You want to know how I know he's using it to get votes in that state? Is because what has Joe Biden committed to the Hawaiian residents over there in Maui after the Maui fires? What was it, $700 he gave each resident? What about East Palestine, Ohio? How much money did Joe Biden commit over there? Ladies and gentlemen, would you rather commit your taxpayer money to the Maui fires and East Palestine, Ohio after a train accident, or a train accident that was done by a private company, by the way, or to a shipping company, a multi-billion-dollar private-owned shipping company out of Singapore? I don't know about you, but I'm just going to go on a limb. I think you would rather give your money to the victims in the Maui fire, that catastrophe over there, and the victims of the East Palestine, Ohio fire, or the East Palestine, Ohio disaster, where the train came off the rails and spilled all those chemicals, the vinyl chloride or whatever it was. A complete and epic disaster that train derailment caused in East Palestine, Ohio. First of all, it took Joe Biden a year to even go over there. All right. And the reason why is because it's a red state. His voters aren't over there. So he can give a flying rip about East Palestine, Ohio. Joe Biden went over to Maui fires, gave each resident $700. But yet, these are our people, folks. These are American citizens that need our help. But Joe Biden can't commit money to them, but he can commit money to a foreign shipping company out of Singapore that collapsed a bridge because it ran into it. All right, it's not like it was an accident and, the bridge fell down because of high winds. No, the bridge fell down because a giant freighter ship ran into it. How is that the fault of the American taxpayer? And so why should we be solely responsible for it? We shouldn't be. All this is optics, folks. It's for Joe Biden to get votes. Anyways, I don't even know how we ended up on this topic. That just goes to show where the show flow leads us off track. Kind of derails us, pun intended. But what I really wanted to talk about was spending. I guess we didn't go too far off the rails there. Spending. Why would the American taxpayer want to build a railroad on the moon? This is what I'm talking about when I say that the government is just entirely way too big and bloated, man. So the first U.S. transcontinental railroad, completed with a spike hammered into the track in 1869, transformed the nation. Perhaps the same will happen on the moon. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, another agency that the taxpayers fund, an ambitious federal innovations division, has begun collaborating with over a dozen companies on potential future lunar technologies, including a moon railroad. It's called the 10-Year Lunar Architecture Capability Study, or Luna 10. Its mission is to find technologies that will catalyze a self-perpetuating lunar economy. It's a salient time. Already the new space race is on. Well, how about this space race, this particular one, since they're probably going up there for minerals and things like helium-3 that the American people just don't benefit from, instead private companies do? Why don't those private companies pay for it? I think the American taxpayer is just sick and tired of wasting their money on stupid stuff. You have some of the dumbest people on the face of the planet, which is the people in Congress, spending our money on investments that yield no returns for the American people. None. In fact, they're so bad at investing our money. The investments they do make that could benefit the American people, they give to other countries. And so what do people think is going to happen with a railroad on the moon? Do you think the American people are going to go on a train ride up on the moon? No, this is for minerals. This is for resources. Highly valuable resources that the American people are not going to benefit from, but are going to be funding. So it's an endeavor that seeks to avoid a go-at-it-alone approach wherein diverse nations and industries struggle to communicate, travel, and do business on the moon. The NASA Apollo missions from over 50 years ago were an extraordinary exploration and engineering marvel, but those billions in spending never established growth or a lasting presence on the moon. One of the critiques about Apollo is we put in all this effort and then it ended. Michael Nayak, a program manager at DARPA's Strategic Technology Office, told Mashable. Now, as NASA global space agencies and companies return to the moon with robotic spacecraft, the future Nayak sees is one that must be able to progress. It might be mining helium-3, told you, an extremely rare resource on Earth that could be used to medical imaging, computing, and even energy, harvesting water ice to create rocket fuel for deep space missions and beyond. How do we make it valuable to life on Earth? Nayak, a former space shuttle engineer and NASA planetary scientist overseeing Luna 10, emphasized. The project is called Luna 10 because it's focused on what lunar technology would realistically look like in the 10 years after NASA's Artemis 3 mission, wherein astronauts will land in the moon's coveted South Pole, a region where planetary scientists suspect there's water ice and other resources lodged in dark, shadowy craters. As of March 2024, NASA expects astronauts to step foot on the moon in late 2026. Yeah, they've been working on these Artemis missions for years. It has been one failure, one delay after another. And mind you, 50 years ago, we were sending astronauts to the moon like once, it seemed like once a year. And I think it was like once every 6 months with the Saturn rockets. I mean, I think we went a total of 8 times we touched foot on the moon, 8 different times. I think I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. But anyways, it's helium-3, folks, is what they're doing. They found helium-3 to be extremely valuable for multiple different reasons. It may be one of the highest price resources. Well, not even on the planet, but there is some helium-3 on the planet, but not much. They find it deep in the oceans. But listen, I don't have a problem, exploring the moon, going there. I think it's actually good for the American people to have hope in something like that. I think it's great. But I just don't think now's the time. You know what I mean? Like, I think this country needs to get its stuff together, man. Like, I really do. Like, we are on the brink of collapse here. And I know you've heard that a lot throughout the years, but I'm serious, folks. We have a huge debt problem in this country. You had an article that came out from Bloomberg, and they ran a simulation, right? They ran a simulation on our economy over 1 million times, and almost 90% of the time, it led in a collapse in our economy. Complete collapse in our currency, like Great Depression stuff. Almost 90% of 1 million times it ran through the simulator. We are in our debt is such an existential threat to this country. More than our foreign enemies, a bigger threat than China, a bigger threat than Russia. Like, our debt is becoming our biggest national security risk because you see what's happening all around you. You see the collapse of our border. You see the collapse of our respect on the world stage. This administration has probably been one of the most destructive presidential administrations in U.S. history. There's never been so much damage, irreversible damage done in 3.5 years by anybody. And I mean anybody. I'm talking worldwide. Joe Biden has done more damage to this country than any foreign adversary, that any foreign enemy ever could have in just 3.5 years. And so I feel like maybe, just maybe, our government should focus on fixing this country. Just going to throw it out there. Why don't they focus on fixing this country before the American taxpayer commits to building a railroad on the moon for private corporations to harvest and mine for rare earth minerals like helium-3? And granted, helium-3 is great, but I assure you, we're not going to benefit at all from it. In fact, probably what's going to happen is they're going to use our money to build this railroad on the moon to harvest a resource that they'll then sell back to us. Kind of like how China handles us when it comes to patents and inventions and resources and all of the above. They screw us over, man. Donald Trump's been saying this for 10 years, 15, 20 years. The entire world screws over America. And who ends up paying the most is the American taxpayer. Not these Congress people. They come out multimillionaires. They got pensions for the rest of their life. Did you know that? Did you know that congressmen and women, after they leave office, they get a pension for the rest of their life? Yeah. They get a nice cushy pension, like $250,000 or $200,000 a year or whatever. Not only that, but they most definitely probably keep their classified, their security clearances. And so they'll use that security clearance to go work at Northrop Grumman or Lockheed Martin or Raytheon to sit on a board and collect another $500,000 a year. So this is what's happening in our country. This is what I wanted to talk about. The moon thing is actually pretty cool. You know, I love science stuff. I think it's pretty cool. I just don't want the American taxpayer funding it. That's all. Just like I don't want the American taxpayer to fund this bridge collapse either. I think maybe my suggestion for that situation is to allow the private shipping company to conduct a proper investigation, and the United States government should conduct an investigation as well before committing hundreds of millions of taxpayer money to a foreign shipping company out of Singapore. So this is how dumb our leadership is. What you're watching right now, all this destruction, has been caused by dumb, weak leadership. In fact, nobody knows who's running this country because it's not Joe Biden. It's just not. I don't know who it is, to be honest. It could be, I think it's probably more likely Obama behind the scenes. Joe Biden is surrounded by Obamaites. And I have no idea why. I voted for the guy in 2008 for one time. I didn't vote the second time. I do not know what the American people, I don't know. I don't understand what Democrats see in Barack Obama. The guy was not that great of a president. I mean, you ask around, ask people, say, hey, what did Obama do that was so great? Nobody knows. I mean, the first thing they used to spit out was Obamacare, but that ended up being a friggin' disaster, just like everybody said it would. It jacked up everybody's insurance premiums. How much is your health insurance now? Thank you. So Barack Obama didn't do a lot. And other than killing innocent people with drone strikes, not much. Which reminds me of Joe Biden coming out, the audacity of this guy to come out and tell Israel how to conduct war. Talking about how what Israel did with their accidental drone strike on this charity group, this Washington, D.C. chef's kitchen, celebrity chef restaurant aid workers. You know, they went over there in a war zone, by the way. In a war zone, they got accidentally drone striked by Israel. And Joe Biden comes out, has the audacity to sit there and tell Israel that there's going to be consequences if they don't change the way that they're conducting themselves. Who the hell does this guy think he is? I mean, oh, how quick does he seem to forget, which is not surprising, being how he's senile. He probably actually does forget that it was the Biden administration that was responsible for a drone strike that vaporized an entire family of innocent people. And 7 of those people were innocent children. Did Joe Biden forget about that? And this guy's going to have the audacity to come out and tell Netanyahu how to conduct war? Who the hell would trust anything Joe Biden has to say about war anyways? I wouldn't listen to Joe Biden when it comes to conducting war if he was the last person on the face of the earth. I wouldn't let Joe Biden run a lemonade stand. And yet we're supposed to, Netanyahu, how is Netanyahu even supposed to answer that? Like, he's got to be looking at Joe Biden like, what? Are you nuts? This is a guy that's been wrong on every foreign policy the last 40 years. He's responsible for the Afghanistan debacle. He's responsible for the accidental drone strike that vaporized a whole family, including 7 children. He's probably solely responsible for the attack on Ukraine by Russia because of his weakness. This guy has overseen every single foreign disaster we have right now in our country. We've never seen this much foreign conflict since Joe Biden's taken office. Like, the peace and prosperity that the American people were witnessing during the Trump administration, that was all gone the first month of Biden in office, with his stupid Afghanistan withdrawal, all to make headlines, all to reach a timeline so that he could go out there and brag about how he got the United States out of the war on 9/11. That's what he wanted, a photo op. So Joe Biden got 13 American soldiers killed because he wanted a photo op. And this is the crazy thing to me. When they were rolling those flag-draped coffins off the back of that plane of those 13 soldiers, Joe Biden had the audacity to check his watch, not once, but multiple times, in front of parents, dude. Like, this guy is the worst possible president the American people could have ever voted for. He is the biggest mistake this country has ever made. And I'm talking, there's been a lot of mistakes made. But the audacity on this guy, he has no principles, folks. I am so tired of the left-wing Pravda media trying to pretend like there's some moral equivalency between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden is way worse. He is not the grandpa. He is not the lunch bucket Joe they promised us back in 2020. Joe Biden is a flipping disaster. So anyways, I figured I would end off with a cool moon railroad story, which, by the way, they are starting to find water ice on these planets. Oddly enough, they seem to think there may be water ice on Mercury, which is crazy because Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. And the thing, like, the temperatures on that planet, it's like a fiery hell. Literally. I mean, it gets up into the thousands of degrees, and they think there may be water ice on the north and south pole of Mercury, deep down inside craters where the sun just doesn't hit. Because unlike Earth, Mercury, I don't think is tipped on its axis, and if it is, it's not by a lot. And so there's no tilt to Mercury. And so there's some spots on the north and south pole of the planet that never get sunlight, ever, and haven't probably for millions or billions of years. And so they're starting to theorize that there is water ice on Mercury, which would be insane. And so if there's water ice on Mercury, there has to be water ice on the moon, and which would be key to any type of moon base or anything that we do on another planet. There must be water. You have to have water. Human beings have to survive on water. We can't go without water. In fact, we can go weeks or even months without food, but we cannot go but a week without water. And so any type of long-term base or long-term stay on a planet or even on a moon is going to require water. And if you have water ice, and helium-3, I guarantee there's other resources up there that they can use to make rocket fuel. And just like the article said, which I'll leave this in my podcast description, if they have rocket fuel, that is a great launch point for deep space travel, because the moon don't have near the gravity as the Earth. And so they would need hardly any fuel to get off of that and to get out into space to travel. You can travel a long distance by taking off from the moon because there's hardly any gravity. And so there's certainly benefits to having a moon base. I just don't think right now is the time, man. I don't know. I just feel like we got to get back to some stability here. I think it's shocking how they said Donald Trump was going to be just the same stuff they're saying now. He's going to create war. He's going to create death and famine and destruction. He's going to cause a market crash. He's going to be a tyrant dictator. All the stuff they're saying now, they said back in 2016. And it turned out that it's actually Joe Biden that has become everything they said Donald Trump was going to be. And I think it should just convince everybody that these people have been wrong on everything. And it's not that they're wrong on accident. I mean, I get that, like I said, to go all the way back to the naivete of Democrats. But they're wrong because the desired outcome no longer aligns with the desires of the American people anymore. These people are so busy trying to grow the government. They're so busy trying to push forward their agenda, to enrich themselves, to enrich their family members, to enrich their buddies, that it's like we are so off base of where we're supposed to be. And I just hope and pray that the American people as a whole are wise enough, because that is certainly something we lack in this country, are wise enough to elect Donald Trump in 7 months, 27 weeks, so that the American people can get their country back. You guys want to see some amazing, historical stuff take place when it comes to freedom and liberty and the demise of this fourth branch of government? Elect Donald Trump and you're going to see some game-changing stuff happen in this country. I'm talking slashing regulations. I'm talking peace around the world, in the Middle East, prosperity for everyone, not just the left and not just the right and not just the rich either, which is something I wanted to talk about on the next segment because this has gone on for far too long. I wanted to talk about the tax cuts. I keep hearing these narratives on the left and I keep telling myself I want to get to the bottom of these for any Democrat or independent that may be listening. The Trump tax cuts benefited the working middle class the most. Trump's tax cuts did not benefit just the rich, like they keep saying it. This is why I talked about the CIA manipulating the public, is because I feel like Democrats and people on the left and independents need to realize that we have been being manipulated for a long time. Donald Trump tax cuts benefited the working middle class the most. And I have to ask the Democrats or any leftists that may be listening, if the economy's doing so good, like they keep trying to convince you it is, then why don't you see it? It is that simple. We're talking about basic logic here. If the economy is so good, if the job numbers are so good, if everything is going so great like they tell you it is, why does it seem like everything's getting worse? It's because they're lying to you. These people have been lying to us for many, 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 many years. And it's not going to stop until the American people get their country back. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for now. I'm going to be getting back on here in a minute. This was actually a late show. It's actually really late. It's almost midnight. But I'm going to go ahead and release this show tonight. And then we'll be back on here tomorrow to talk about, I guess we'll talk about the tax cuts. We'll get into a lot of these narratives that I keep hearing pop up. I want to get into some election news. There's been a lot of good news about Donald Trump this weekend when it comes to funding and we got a lot of stuff to get into. And trust me, I have gobs and gobs of notes that I take down all day, every day. I read so much for you guys, for my listeners, for you guys. I think it would shock you just how much I read just to do one show. The amount of show prep that goes into, just to an hour and a half's worth of content is mind-blowing. I wish I could do, 10-minute pieces or 15-minute pieces, and I could, and maybe I will down the road. But for me, it's too much for me just to get out within 10 to 15 minutes. And so I feel like we need a whole 3 or 4 hours really to talk about all the stuff that really matters. But I just don't have time to do it. But we got a lot of stuff to get into, so we're going to be getting into all this stuff tomorrow. A lot more to get into. And I want you guys to have a good weekend. So as always, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you get some rest on Sunday, and I will talk to you guys here in a little bit. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.